Easy breezy, ladies, gentlemen, and MBs, and welcome to Warui Deshou's stream of thought covering Eizouken, or Eizouken, however you pronounce it, tomato. You know I'm terrible for this. This is why you love me. I am, of course, Shadon, and joining me as always from across the pond but close by is the Soul Doctor. He's over in that direction, I believe. I could be wrong.
Do you have a compass?
I need to mark it in giant pen on the walls of my house. It needs to be an N or a W, a southeast, whatever, It needs to be completely obnoxious. I'll figure it out eventually.
I am really into the idea of becoming a cardinal direction in your house. Like, which way's the restroom? It's a dock by dock east down the hall.
It's due dock. There you go.
Yes, exactly. Hi, everyone. So happy to be back here doing this, talking about this super fun show, and happy you could join us.
Damn right. Okay, so we do have a bit of housekeeping this week because we're still in kind of the Vinland Saga afterglow, so to speak. And therefore, we want to, cover our previous polls, get those out of the way. Then, of course, we'll cover the polls from episode 2. I'll go through the plot of Eizouken after Doc also then gives us a quick summary of the creatives this time around. And then we'll get into our talking points. And we've got not one, not two, but 3 times the Patron questions, So we're going to have plenty to talk about as this particular episode goes along. So, all right, let's start off with the polls. Let's truly wrap up Vinland Saga for now until season 2 comes out.
Oh, okay, all right.
That's a look.
Yeah, when you said we had 2 sets of polls, I thought you meant the Eizouken ones that hadn't closed last time we did an episode. So technically, not only do we have 3 times the Patron questions, we have 3 times the polls.
We've got all the primaries going in, that technically has started in the US as I understand it.
Oh, it's all
you fucking vote for, by the way.
It's a hell of a time.
Don't make the mistake my fucking country did. Jesus.
It's a hell of a time. People coming out saying dumb shit every single hour of every single day. But no,
welcome to the internet.
Exactly. Hello, this is Planet Earth. So I'm now ready. I have the Vinland polls and I have both Eizouken polls. Would you like to start with Vinland Saga?
Yeah, we'll get Vinland done first and then move on to Eizouken.
Rip Vinland. I barely knew ye. But I am ordering that manga. And if you all out there, patron and public alike, pressure Shadon, we'll continue covering the manga, but one volume at a time.
If you literally jump in through my living room window and just shake me by the shoulders, I may well end up talking about it on a podcast. Although you're gonna have to pay for the window after you're done, so maybe you can just knock at my door first.
That might be. Good.
Let's use the actual entrance to the house. To tell me in person about why I should cover it. Or you can talk to me on the internet. Maybe that might be simpler. I don't know.
There's talking to you on the internet. That's a good idea. Just don't.
This plan might have more legs to it than I gave it credit for.
Don't enter your house the Viking way. Is that what you're saying?
Well, half and half. Like entering the Viking way, if you're bringing all the booze and stuff, then yes.
I guess it's okay if you smash the wall.
If you're entering by setting it on fire or smashing it with a hatchet. Maybe not so much. I don't know if my insurance covers that. I'm just saying, Vikings is not a subclause.
I mean, that sounds like an act of God to me, like a troop of Vikings storming into your house. I don't know.
Quite possibly. All right, so
surely the Geico has to cover that. Anyway, Vinland Saga finale. Poll number 1. Is Askeladd's reaction face to the whale's invasion plan the greatest face in anime history? No question takes it, 74%.
It's like this. He's just like, can't cope.
It's just like, he just looks like his soul has left his body through his mouth. It's incredible.
That is what if I were to screenshot that and I would save it, I would call when you fucked up .jpg.
It is. It totally is. Poll 2. Askeladd, the Decapitator, the King Insulter. The choices are Scrub or Real One. Real One takes it, 89%. Hell yeah, Askeladd is indeed a real one.
You didn't even call him the Kingslayer.
Exactly.
Yeah, too easy.
God damn it.
I mean, alongside Lefove Gullet and also Jaime Lannister, Askeladd's joined that very exclusive club of people who decide, that crown would look better elsewhere.
Yeah, and just like Jaime, it was not he who got to wear it.
Why did he fuck his sister?
Well, yeah. But when he killed
No,
when
I mean,
he killed
did
what's his
ask
face?
London?
No.
Sorry.
No,
That's
he
what I
may
meant.
well listen. It doesn't say, but just because it doesn't explicitly deny it does not mean we can rule it out.
Oh, that's a subset of Vinland Saga fanfic I never want to read. I'm just going to put that out there now.
Okay, so I will not take the bait and jump into Song of Ice and Fire minutia. We'll move on to poll 3. Thorfinn's scream / guttural noise at the end. Best of its kind in voice acting. Yes, takes it with 85% of the vote. Those are the polls for Vinland Saga.
Can't disagree there. All right, and then we have the Eizouken polls. Let's give those a look-see for episode 2.
Well, we checked in on episode 1, but they hadn't finished. So now that
you're right.
Now that they're finalized, I'll quickly read through those again. I don't know if they've changed that much, but here we go. So, is Masaki Yuasa the best fit possible for this adaptation? 55% say yes, closer than... Oh, well, there's yes and yes. So the mild-mannered yes takes
so it. So everyone said yes in the end.
Yes, really. Exactly. Would you defy orders to join the anime club? Hi, takes it with 82%. And Kanamori's backpack, 73.8% believe it is best, not just good, and certainly not bad. Now, episode 2. The polls have closed, but you can vote for the polls that will be appearing for episode 3 on our Twitter page at Warui Deshou on Twitter, twitter.com/Warui Deshou. What is the ideal solution to a problem as per the Tao of Kanamori? Money or violence? Money takes it, 57%.
She has been more focused on...
Upset.
Yeah, she has focused a bit more on money throughout the show thus far. In fact, I think that the ratio that everyone's got there is probably about accurate to how she's treated like the other characters in the show thus far. Like, tiny little bit more money, not entirely less violence. I think you could be on something there, folks.
But my favorite reply to this is from Wingles, 1312 on Twitter, who understands that this poll is another instance of yes and yes when they say implicit and explicit violence underlies all monetary relations. So, violence is the only choice.
Who's been invoking the ghost of Karl Marx again? Fess up.
Totally. Listen.
Marx has a Twitter account now. That's how we go.
I'm into it.
I reckon Kanamori would probably have a fist fight with Marx, actually. Because she's all about making that dough.
Yeah, to completely. And she would find some very arbitrarily specific reason to dislike him. Like, I don't like anyone who begins... You're right. I don't like anyone who begins their conversations with a tribute to their forebears or something like that. I love how she does that. Love it. Poll 2. Would you use Asakusa's helicopter belt? Hell yes. Probably the easiest poll ever. Wins by 85%, and 14.3% of you are cowards.
I like I said on the previous podcast, I don't want to reach my hand down by accident just looking for my wallet and then come back and like, where's it gone? Why is there a stump here? And why am I leaking strawberry jam all over the place? That's unfortunate. Oh well, I'll try and grab it with my other hand. Oh no, now that's gone too.
Oh no. So you've just described how I lost part of my finger in a lawnmower accident. Basically that.
Well, did you get your wallet in there?
Unfortunately, not my wallet. It was basically like, so there's like an exit chute on the side of this mower I had that so the blade is underneath, and to the side of the blade is meant to be a chute that pushes out all the clippings, but it had gotten clogged. And I thought that the clippings were sticking far enough out where I could grab the end of them and pull them out of there while it was still going, because I didn't want to waste all that time and energy turning the machine off and back on. I was in a hurry, so I sacrificed the tip of my finger for that. This was 5 years ago. No, almost. I guess this year, in about 8 months, it will be the 6-year anniversary of...
rest in peace.
Yes, rest in peace, top of my middle finger.
May you forever serve your purpose as lawnmower PSA material.
Please, if I can get just one person to not do that. Poll 3. Did you find Asakusa's and Mizusaki's descriptions of how anime is created, including the visuals, informative and effective. Honest to goodness, this might be the most lopsided poll we've ever had.
We've had a couple of hundreds, to be fair,
Have we? Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I guess without being 100%, this is 97.4% say they loved it, and 2.6% said not so much. Reveal yourself. 2.6%, you pedantic Sakuga nerds. Out yourselves.
I just want to fault people in
punishment.
Chat. I just want to fault people in chat saying press F to pay your respects for Doc's finger. Doc would press F to pay respects for his finger himself, but it doesn't really work properly anymore.
I can't reach the F key.
Gutted. All right. Well, anyway, thank you very much to everyone who's taken part in the polls. I really appreciate you, chipping in your little 2 cents there. Plenty more, time coming up as we go along with more polls for you to do that. You can find them at Warui Deshou on Twitter. And I believe that now takes us over to the creatives for this particular episode. Would you be willing to fire away with that?
Yeah, I can talk some more. I got no problem with talking about...
You're on an anime podcast. I hope you're not about to reveal some sort of crippling personality flaw when it comes to talking. We've been doing this for 4 years, man.
You would have discovered it by now, I think, if that were the case. But luckily, it's not. So I can talk about Jiseki wo Uchitatero. That was a terrible mispronunciation. That is the Japanese for let's accomplish something. This is episode 3 of Eizouken, directed by Yuki Igarashi. Not to be confused with Castlevania man Koji. I think he's Koji Igarashi. Someone in chat will probably know. But Yuki-san here is a key animator of some repute, I believe. This is their first time to do episode. No. Oh, wait a minute. That is for Eizouken. I saw episode direction and I was like, oh wait, and then it was like, well, that is for Eizouken itself. So, no, I think this is their first time to do direction, but they did the storyboards as well. They were the animation director, the mecha designer, a key animator, and prop designer, all for this episode. So,
damn,
hell yeah, doing the heavy lifting, Yuki-san. But Igarashi previously had worked on Guilty Crown, key animator. But look, if there's a thing that you can say for that show, is that it at times looked nice.
No! At times it was barely fucking animated. The second half of that show was like watching a PowerPoint. I mean...
Does
Let's carry on.
Does Flip Flappers do anything for you?
I know of it. I know it's a thing.
It's a really beautiful thing. Key animation for episodes 3, 5, and 12. Bungo Stray Dogs was a key animator for the ending of season 2. I love to say Bungo Stray Dogs. Bungo is a fun thing to say. Is it Bungo? Bungo? Either way.
Sounds like umbongoing, knockoff, fruit juice that we have in the UK.
I want to shout out that this credit here, Miss Hokusai, a movie that I love a lot, that I've done a podcast about with my significant other, my wife and partner. We talked about that movie, and
you cheated on me.
I did. I cheated on you with my actual spouse. She's the other woman for once. Hey, there you go. Yuki-san did the brush animation in Miss Hokusai. Well, I don't know if I should say the brush animation, because the credit here is just, I don't know if they did all of it, but the brush animation in this show about Japanese painters is unbelievable. So that's an amazing thing that they have done there. Is there anything else?
There is actually. I will chip in for once on the creative rather than sitting back like this. Oh yes, perfectly postured. No, I have this on good authority from Yukinon, who told us in our Discord chat. We of course have ending title cards that we have unfortunately neglected to mention over the past 2 episodes because I don't know if you know this, folks. We're kind of bad. sorry for the spoiler, in the late, fourth year revelation here.
I know.
But title card this time around is done by someone named Suzuki Mizu. Who is Suzuki Mizu? I believe that it's the mangaka for Girls Last Tour.
Ooh, that is. Oh, I know that's one of Buggy, of Third Seat by the Windows, favorite things. And that's an anime I'm looking to get into. I picked it up on sale over the holiday, and I've not seen it yet, but I'm very excited to dive into it. I've heard it compared to Nier Automata in certain ways before, so that's intriguing. We'll see.
So it's like it repeats itself several times with new twists each time, and also is incredibly emotionally depressing.
That could
also inexplicably features daftness, like how androids can eat, fish.
Mm-hmm, that could be true.
Oh god, 2B can have a little, salmon. Just saying. All right. So those creatives covered. Let's talk about the episode itself.
Bungo, according to chat, by the way. Bungo means books.
Not bungo or bongo.
Not oingo.
I feel like there's degrees of verbal decay that could go along here if you get more and more drunk trying to say that name. So anyway, don't go watch Bongo Stray Dogs. Go watch Bungo Stray Dogs. Just saying.
Yeah. Oh, and in chat, so we have someone saying that Igarashi was only starting to get noticed a few years ago. I think that was probably I don't know if it was in terms of getting higher profile gigs. Certainly, I think, quote unquote, a few years ago, maybe that's from the Western Sakuga fandom, because they've been working for the better part of the decade. I think the oldest thing on the list is, and maybe this is why they didn't get noticed, because they were working on Battle Spirits, a whole bunch of Battle Spirits in the earlier parts of the decade. So maybe that's why. And then, like I said, so as the decade went along, they were in Flip Flappers, they were in other things. Maybe the Guilty Crown work, like you said, didn't really jump off the page.
Well, it didn't move off the page at all in the second half of that show.
Mob Psycho 100. There's a thing.
Hey, there we go.
Key animation.
Look, every creator is entitled to a turkey. They're entitled to a turkey.
If you're in Flip, that's how they got noticed over here. If you were in Flip Flappers and Mob Psycho doing key animation, the folks that are animation nerds are gonna stan you. Those are two very popular shows in those communities, and that will get you some acclaim, no doubt.
Just don't. Well, I mean, we are watching an anime about making anime here, so I suppose maybe the lesson is, hey, you know what? If you start simply and don't go too far overboard, that's great, but just don't get involved in some real dire shit if at all possible. That might also be a good lesson to have. All right. So let's talk about the episode proper. So, episode 3, let's accomplish something. What do we open with? We open with the Eizouken getting its own logo in a giant, little badge that's put on top of the, corrugated iron shed that they seem to, reside in. This is what Asukusa and Mizuzaki put up there. And this is, of course, the point where Kanamori intervenes and, just points out, hey, this is all well and good, us putting up a studio sign, but we kind of need an actual project. We've got to, do things in order here, a sentiment I would personally agree with. But what I really like about this scene, by the way, is that before we cut to the OP, the logo itself starts animating. And obviously this is Kanamori and Asukusa's own little way of imagining what it would look like if they got to do the studio's opening animation. If you've seen a Pixar film, you've seen the lamp jumping up and down on the eye, for example, that kind of thing. Or even something as simple as Studio Ghibli's trademark blue background with the Totoro logo. Mm-hmm. Every studio's got to have a logo like that these days. But a lot of them actually aren't animated from my memory, at least. I mean, I think of Studio Trigger, for example, and they've got their own unique logo, but I've never seen them, do the obvious bang bang thing that you could in theory do. But that's neither here nor there. But what I like about this scene, just as a small talking point, which doesn't need to be belabored such, is I think this is actually also really nice as an indication of when the club starts properly. This is the big starting point for them, when it really starts to get moving, I really like that. And there's going to be plenty more for me to talk about how they blend together the fantasy with the character stuff later on. So, post OP, what do we need to do? We need to actually start repairing the place. But as you've already gathered from the group dynamic here, Kanamori is the one who's in charge, and she's reading up her own version of what seems like her manifesto if you're a political party leader. I mean, I'd vote for her, wouldn't you?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Oh, easily. But unfortunately, her two, animator underlings are distracted by things like butterflies and raccoons and, other
they
things
really
like
do
that.
make them look simple-minded in this part.
I mean, that is consistent though with their characters in that they it's just that they are all easily distracted.
Yeah, maybe that's uncharitable, simple-minded, but it's just like their imaginations are so like proactive and vivid that they can take any concept and play with it and run with it. So let's go with that. And yeah, very cute raccoon.
But this is the point where, of course, Kanamori starts channeling something I've said previously, which is Kiri and Satsuki energy. I mean, if I had the time, I would have got like a side-by-side picture of Kanamori like standing over them, and then Satsuki like in the same Twitter post. There's like, spot the difference. Spoilers, there aren't any. Not really. But she gets them in line and gets them to work, getting repairs on the roof done. And this is, however, the point where, okay, hey, Asuka's like, simple mind, all that, always gets distracted. So next thing you know, she's imagining that she's repairing the outside of a spaceship. Because why not? Why wouldn't you have a little bit of a daydream to try and make the drudgery of something menial, like repairing this crappy corrugated iron shed better? And this is where Asuka starts discussing various things. Like I've said before, for example, as podcast about the idea of, hey, do you include sound in space or not? Because sound in space, is, well, it doesn't work like that. There is no sound in space. It's a vacuum. In space, no one can hear you scream, not because, it's dramatic, but because the laws of physics say so. Sorry.
I prefer the Gundam take where you shoot bullets in space.
Yeah.
And it's good. You can hear it.
Oh, I prefer the Gundam take as well, where you can self-destruct your mech and everyone else around you is destroyed from hundreds of thousands of miles. But you're fine. You're totally fine.
Cesar, can we get a Kanamori Sanders ticket in the United States, please?
No, just Kanamori. Fuck you. Don't need anyone else.
When do you have to have a running mate? You have to have, well, I guess I don't know. She'd do Mizusaki-chi. Sure.
Kanamori's got enough, big, political energy to, cover for two. I'm just saying.
I'm president and vice president, suckers. Deal with it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So, Asuka's is, enjoying, this image in her mind of spray painting the outside of the ship, thinking about all the minutiae of how it works, even the painting process, how does this work in a vacuum, etc. And of course, Kanamori pops her head out. Asuka's got a bucket on her head that has, how do I put this? It has definitely seen better days. I mean, I thought the shed itself looked like it'd been through hell and back, but this looks like something she picks up in the video game Rust. So hey, there we are. And she's of course spray painting a bunny on the outside of the shed rather than actually fixing any of it. This is the point where they go and move on to Kanamori's like, okay, look, let's just get the big stuff out of the way first. Let's do the roof. Let's go for the roof. There's no way this can possibly go wrong.
That scene, man. Someone should go edit Urban Dictionary and go to the vibe check entry and just put a picture of Kanamori. She is just a living, breathing vibe check.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll say this, right? This episode's events technically could just constitute various hours, but they're infinitely more interesting when they're animated this way. I will say that much.
Yes.
So Asuka sends up the the sheet to be put over the hull, but this is the point, of course, where almost immediately they're back in the fantasy land, and this is where we get Asuka's laboriously detailed spaceship design, which I adore. I adore it for a number of reasons. It really does feel like something that she's totally into, and you get the wonderful snarky details oh, this is this ramen bowl that can be eaten in space. It costs 12 billion yen to develop. That's incredible. And hey, money well spent in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? But this, of course, is all interspersed, it cuts back and forth to Kanamori, who's building a desk. That's it. That's all she's doing. And as someone who built the very desk on which my PC equipment is on right now, I'm going to tell you this for free. It was a ball ache. I was not I was not a fan of it.
Sucks.
Like, here's my IKEA instructions. They're 60 steps long, and there's just some insufferable nonsense that you have to deal with it. Enjoy. I was like, oh, great. So they end up like, this whole like spaceship sequence, like they start like, thinking that they're struggling, and then they make up like a little storyline of how, they're running out of oxygen. That's it started hailing outside. And in turn, the ladder falls down. Mm-hmm. So still inside this little collective, creative fantasy of theirs, they describe it like, say, as oxygen running out. And so they call for help to Kanamori, and without skipping a beat, like she pretends that she's like Capcom, like she's mission control, while she's still sawing out this desk. And it's amazing, like how she then gets sucked in as well. And so she's just like, there's a problem. I need to get outside to help them. How do I do this? How do I get outside quickly and easily? So what would an 80s juice advert do? Bust through a wall.
Exactly. Kanamori is the Kool-Aid man.
Yep.
Oh,
so man. she busts out, but she finds that they've actually already made it down safe, which is a talking point I will get to later, so put a pin in that. But okay. They've made it back, which is great. So they get back inside, and then they start discussing, like, what they're going to do next in terms of projects. They want to make something high quality. But this is, of course, where Mr. My beard is too heavy, so I can't, like, lean my head forward. That's why he's always leaning his head back, because his beard is so heavy, it actually, like, tilts his, like...
so
tilts
good.
His head back. It's like...
Oh, boy.
My goodness. Yeah, I mean...
I love that guy. Really?
His beard must be made of depleted uranium or something like that to cause him such pain. Yes. But he in turn passes them a flyer for a committee that will determine the budgets each club will get, depending on what their pitches are, so to speak. So obviously, Kanamori's got yen signs in her. Seeing that, it's like, we're going to go and smash it. We're going to knock it out of the park, get all the money from them. It'll be great. So over lunch the following day, which, by the way, I noticed this on Twitter, and I need to note it here, Kanamori's like school ID that she uses to like pay for her food, her photograph on that has her wearing her hat, which is just amazing. Like, she didn't take the hat off for the actual picture, which is just incredible. And I like to believe that she would never do that in her future life, ever. Driving license, it's got it on there. Passport, it's got it on there. I know the rule. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Yukon's right. I'm getting too excited about talking about this thing. So, yeah, I apologize for getting the names mixed up. But
I know
by the way, Kanamori, by the way, her own ID has her with her glasses over her head as well.
Does she ever wear them?
I don't think she needs to, although I will say this, Kanamori would be improved in one way only, which is if she had aviators instead.
I don't know. I'm kind of into the one she has, I have to admit. Oh, wait a minute. No, fuck me. I was thinking of for some reason when you said aviators, I was thinking about aviation goggles, like steampunk, But no, aviator glasses. Yes, okay. I approve.
Yes. So over lunch, they're discussing what they need to do. Now, in the previous scene, something I neglected to mention is that Kanamori had discussed like how long the anime was going to need to be, and in turn, like how long it would take them to complete it before the deadline for this committee, which will decide the club's budget. So they have a discussion about length, and Asakusa says something incredible, which, I've reviewed a fair few shitty anime in my time, folks. Let me tell you that for free.
No, really?
And she makes the amazing, magical, Hitterto, spoken suggestion that blew my mind. Maybe we should start the script. And I'm like...
Does she say the script?
Honestly,
yeah, I can't remember the specific line. Does she say the script here, or just...
She says scripts, yes.
Okay, cool, good.
Yes. So she's discussing that, and then they make a plan to go to her place, collect some concept art that she had previously come up with to help develop the scene that they're going to do as this proof of concept. This leads them then taking...
in my house.
I have all my ideas stashed in my house, just not down here, unfortunately. So they then get on the subway, or the metro, or whatever you call it, to get to hers. And we again get some nice banter between her and Eizouken, whereas, like I've got the end seat on the way home. No rematch, scrub. and that's why I reckon, like, apart from like potentially being an amazing engineer, which is something I'll discuss later, I also think Asuka's would be a great fighting game player. She knows when to pop off. She knows when to say, stay free.
I don't know if she'd be like good at the decision making part, but yeah, she'd be fun to have on stream. Put it that way.
she's very detail oriented. One thing I need to know about this train ride back is that there are a number of adverts of Mizusaki advertising products. You got watch, for example, bottle of water, all very Risa Kujikawa. You've kind of seen this kind of thing before. But again, I want you to put a pin in that for later because that's important. There's a reason that's in there simply than just a reminder. Well, it is there to reminder, or us rather, that hey, she's like quite famous. So there's a reason that's being put in there. And this is also where we get to meet two of her fans. One of whom is a fan of a band that I personally am quite fond of, Slipknot, as in Slipknot, obviously, but with the letters removed.
Which is what's that? I didn't notice that detail. That's funny.
Yeah, like she has a cap on that says SLPKNT, and I'm like, I
definitely know what that is. Yeah.
I see you there.
Are you a fan of the Slipknot?
I've been known to. I think they're pretty good.
That's cool. Cool.
I'm personally fond of their song, Wit and Bled.
That's the only one I know. I was gonna say this one is the only one that I had my shitty new metal phase. When I was living through the early aughts, late 90s. And that one I knew, but I didn't really follow them. They weren't one of the bands that I was super duper into, but that's cool.
They are pretty good. I still like them quite a bit, to be quite honest. I haven't listened so much to their modern material as you might expect from someone who's like as old as I am. Insert, Shadon's like, 2,500 years old. Kind of joke here. They're all good. Whatever age you pick, it's all good. Just make sure it's a triple-digit number at the minute. But anyway, yeah. So that's again like a reminder, like hey. This is important that she's from a rich family and is like famous for like being out there in the world on advertisements and such. So they make it back to Asuka and they start going through her notes, which lead to her showing again another amazing bit of concept art for a tank. And this tank, SNK, my boys, Metal Slug creators.
This is really good.
Yeah, you need to take note.
Yeah.
You've got a new design there for a Metal Slug tank. I'm just saying, it's great. And I can't stress enough, me and Doc, we're not Sakuga people, really, to be quite honest. So we're kind of, not necessarily the best people to talk about the show, maybe. But even I could appreciate just how wonderful all of the animation was that came through all this. Like the actual physicality of the tank, blowing itself backwards and then coming back up again. And then the mushroom cloud that comes out. There's not many frames of animation in this, but it doesn't need to be. It's still really, really cool. I enjoyed it a lot.
She said it was based on the rice ball, which was a great inspiration.
Why not? This. But yeah, while they're going through this, of course, they're going through all of Asuka's concept, literally going through it. They're passing through it one by one. And they're, on target to try and make something relatively simplistic so they can meet the deadline, which is results in them picking out this deserted how to put it, desert environment, Grand Canyon sort of, if you want to call it that kind of place. But we then get to learn from Mizusaki, and this is something that I think is really, really important about her as a person. We learn about what kind of animation she wants to do as opposed to Asuka, which is Asuka's all... you've seen the episodes. Technology. Here's a tank. Here's a plane. Here's a belt that turns into a helicopter that makes me fly. Here's a Jetsons car. Here's me repairing the outside of a spaceship. None of the stuff that she has focused on thus far has actually been about characters. It's only been stuff that she's projected herself into. Keep that in mind. Whereas Mizusaki's well... While you were, studying economics, Kanamori, I studied the blade.
Right. Yeah.
Because she did, literally. She's talking about, how she wants to animate, realistic movement and motion and, detailed characters, which leads into, by the way, what I think is a Takeshi Miike tribute, possibly. I could be wrong on that. Certainly looks something like that, though, of this, samurai or ronin or whatever practicing swordplay. And this grayscale scene, fucking hell. I love it. I absolutely love that little moment there. But again, this is also side by side with her holding the sword up herself in frame. So you've got her on this side and the guy she's imagining on that one divided by a line down the middle. That is really, really important, by the way, for what I'm going to talk about later. So if you want to like screenshot that and like print it out and stick it up in front of your monitor, please do that.
Can I say,
go on.
I tag yourself right in chat if this was you, but I remember either week 1 or week 2 when we were doing this, someone said Asakusa wants to do a Ghibli-like film and Mizusaki wants to do a Kyoto animation film, and it's like that was just it was true then, but even after this episode it's like underscored even more, like the way she's talking about like, you know, I want to do not just anime like sort of tropey concepts or like what you might think of as anime. I want to make animation, and the best kind of animation. Thank you, Grizzly. You nailed it. The best kind of animation is like anime stopping to kind of highlight the extraordinary qualities of mundane motions or objects, and like an animator is like a character director or an object director. All that stuff was like so like what I think of when I think of KyoAni and what they do well, apart from making everything shiny. She didn't say that, so maybe she's not a full KyoAni devotee.
Where a single moment is like compressed in time, having it play out in slow motion, for example. I mean, say what you will about UFO Table, for example, and the fact that they seem to be better at evading taxes and actually doing anime these days. No, I'm not going to let that joke fly. Yes, I'm going to keep beating that dead horse. Sorry. But like, I remember watching Fate's Stay Night, Heaven's Feel. I almost said Grand Order then, but that's a different thing. Late last year. And fight scenes in that one, amazing as always. Like when you get like explosions going off and they don't like go off immediately. It's like little compressed opening. Gives it, again, like as Asakusa would say, like a real sense of impact. Like, and that's something that she, like, I can see Mizusaki being into as well as fluid character motion.
That Demon Slayer shit.
Yes, hopefully with a more compelling story, but, well, that's...
By the way, you mispronounced the name. It's actually...
Of course I did!
It's actually Heaven's Feel.
Yes.
That's how you have to say it.
Yes, it is. Why did you have to say that like you were advertising some sort of...
Heaven's Feel.
I'm sure that's like a brand of knockoff toilet paper somewhere. Oh, you should see some of the shit they try to peddle over here for toilet paper. But anyway, that's a discussion for a different time. So this is where we kind of get a little bit of a conflict. Not a major one, mind you, but we can see like a divergence now in what the two characters want to do. I mean, admittedly, we did, as I say, have the comment that someone made in our first episode coverage that, you know, they wanted to, like, Mizusaki wanted KyoAni, whereas Asakusa wants Ghibli. Both with their merits, mind you, I should stress. But what I like about this is that, again, it's all down to Kanamori, you know, acting as project's head, bringing them together, and they start like synthesizing this scenario of a girl fighting the tank that Asakusa came up with before in this canyon with a machete and a gas mask, and they start building on the details. Like we get to see the best of both worlds.
The most anime thing ever, by the way, which is ironic, right? I feel like a schoolgirl versus a tank is like super duper, like, you know, here's like a clip from the Daikon animation, or you know what I mean? Like here's like this 80s OAV. Like people are saying it's very Trigger. It is Trigger, but like it's also like, I don't know, pick like a random like mecha focused OAV that you can only find on pirate sites, or like a bikini babe with sword. God, I'm terrible with names. I watched one that so reminded me of this scene. It started with, I feel like an L. I can't remember the name of it. But...
Did you forget because of plausible deniability?
No, it was actually quite fine in terms of that stuff.
I'm
but
kidding,
like, it was just like, you know, the lady could have been wearing whatever, but she just happened to be wearing like a, you know, bikini armor, but she had a cool sword and was doing cool shit against airships. I'm like, this anime was like rife with that sort of thing at one point in time.
Oh, do I need to mention, what was his name? Was it Daisuke from, you know, Lupin? No, that's Jigen. What was the other one? I can't remember his name. Blinkaji, if he listens to this, he's going to kill me.
Who are you? Which character are you talking about? The samurai?
Goemon. There we go.
Goemon, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, swords are always welcome, you like. So this, like, they go through the scene here, and they go through detail on rapid cuts between the tank itself and the girl as she comes in closer and closer to help build the impacts of the the impending sword strike. Also, how Kanamori, even though she herself isn't an animator as far as we've seen thus far, she mentions hey, what if we clone the explosions? And I'll just say right again as a small point here, animation is hard work. I understand.
Yeah.
And I think that, there are times when corner cutting is certainly a good thing to do. I wouldn't, for example, say that they should be doing individual explosions every single time for something as detailed as they want to do, because it's not practical. If there's one thing I really like about Eizouken, and I'm getting ahead of points here, is that it's so far managing, to be inspiring to people who do want to pursue creative interest, but also stressing an element of pragmatism and restraint in order that you might actually be able to pull it off. This, for example, I say, sorry, was that Skuza? I could have sworn it was Kanamori. My apologies. But say, for example, if this show instead was about writing a book, it wouldn't tell you, even in all its enthusiasm, to write how a Robert Jordan Wheel of Time length series. If you don't know what the Wheel of Time is, that is a ridiculously long series of books. It's ridiculous.
It killed Robert Jordan.
Yeah, or even do something like Game of Thrones. It would tell you to start with a short story, but it would still have the enthusiasm to get across how powerful that can be and how interesting that can be. And that's what Eizouken is doing here. It's not telling these characters, you know what, I do want to play Kanamori. More Kanamori all the time. Cloner, make all of them. Yukinon's right. But what Eizouken is telling us here is that, you're starting out, you're enthusiastic, and your enthusiasm is valid, and it's important, and it's necessary to get things done, as well as also making it unique and interesting to look at. But you have to temper it a little bit, else you won't be able to get anything done at all, or you'll burn out. Indeed, I think Kanamori mentions that at the start, this will be the end of our group here if we don't do that. But anyway, so the fight, between the tank and the girl plays out until just before the end, and then we go to a cliffhanger, and that's the end of the episode. That's it. And what a fine episode it was, as always. Right. So we've covered the episode's topics, and I've also completely misnamed half the characters. I mean, if people want to, make a sin bin, I'd be more than happy for you to do so. I'm terrible with names in general. I do apologize. Moth-eaten, alcohol-eaten brain notwithstanding. So we're going to go firstly to our Patron questions, because we actually have three of them.
Just before we do that, I want to have a quick word. We started to do this to break up the segments, and I want to keep doing it. So we don't have to put it all in at the end, I guess.
Go on.
Wanted to do a quick plug for our Patreon. Patreon.com/WARUIDESHOU. There's plenty of really good rewards that you can go get if you sign up. And we have 3 budget-friendly tiers. It's not a lot of money. You can help support us, and you can get access to our Discord. You can ask the patron questions that we're about to answer here in the next segment. You guaranteed get your question answered on these streams, either these ones or the ones that cover our anime streaming podcast that we do exclusively really for patrons, or at least it's early access to patrons. Second stream. We're covering Jeweler Richard right now, and if you want to get those podcasts when they come out, and also ask questions and have them answered on air about that show and future shows, become a patron. Like I said, you can get on our Discord. You could get exclusive solo content from us. All kinds of other fun stuff that we're doing. We do an after-hour show. We're going to be doing that today, where we just talk about whatever game. Excuse me. Whoa. That was
I was gonna say that was emotion right there.
We talk about whatever anime or game or media that we're into, or even just more abstract stuff. That is not what we're covering. So check us out there. Also, this goes for anybody, patron or non. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, this is a new thing. You don't need to call a telephone number or anything. You just need to have a microphone, either on your phone or your PC. Mm-hmm. You just go to anchor.fm/Warui Deshou, and there's a button, message. You click that message, and there's a record button. Get yourself on the podcast. Unless you don't want to post it, unless you don't want it to be public, and you can say in the message that we won't post it. That's a way for you to get in contact with us and also have yourself heard on, the podcast. And if you have comments, those will be heard. If you have questions, we'll answer them on pod. All that good stuff. So
we will not be delivering any pizza that's on.
We will not. It's true. You can
if you want to put a pizza order in, I'll take it as a suggestion for what to get for myself. But if you think I'm sending a Domino's halfway across the world to yourselves there, just out of my own heart, well, maybe we could, maybe we could make that happen.
Oh my God! But this is just we switched hosts recently, so this is a feature that our host has. So we thought we would tell you about it in hopes that we get some use out of it, and you guys could see some benefit from it. So anchor.fm/Warui Deshou if you'd like to leave us a voicemail. And now we can get into the discussion.
That we can. Okay, so Patron questions we have this week. The first of which comes from Navy Cherub, and it goes something like this. This is abstract, but does anyone else get isekai vibes from the way these girls are essentially trying to reverse engineer the process of making anime from old technology? Reminds me of stuff like Dr. Stone. All right, then.
Do you have an answer to this?
I think for me...
I read it, but I just have been thinking about it for a while. But go ahead.
I think for me, I'm not sure about these kind of them, but I can say at least what I feel about Eizouken's approach to creating anime, especially in this kind of very grassroots, very early startup way, is that I don't know, for example, how well I could speak on behalf of, say, for example, an actual artist, but I myself wrote short fiction, long fiction previously, a while back, and I never had any formal training in any of that. It's just something I kind of picked up. Why am I bringing this up? Because I think what Eizouken is advocating is something similar to what I did, which is I basically self-taught how to write. Sometimes the best way to learn is to simply go in without any formal training, so to speak, and just kind of discover things on your own. Here's the tool. How do you use it? Not saying, of course, they're going completely blind, because clearly they have some foreknowledge, but rather I think the intent, as I understand it, is it's a good thing for you to just give things a try on their own without necessarily, worrying about going through all the necessary training beforehand. I think maybe you could answer this, if you're in chat. How did you learn to draw, for example? Did you teach yourself? A lot of artists on Twitter who make their living these days, for example, I'd imagine they obviously did have, formal training at school, for example. But I don't think a lot of them are necessarily graphic designers. Some of them would be self-taught. There's for example, I know that people are going to laugh at me for bringing this up, but I have to. There's an artist in fine game circles named Cheisu, who does a lot of drawings of under-night in birth characters. Completely self-taught, as I understand it, also because he's colorblind, as it happens. Not in a grayscale kind of way, but more, I think it's deuteronia. I must have mispronounced that, but basically you can only see blues, or shades of blue, and also shades of peach or olive. So yeah, I think that might be, to answer your question in a sideways, Navy, what the show is trying to get across by having them reverse engineer the process from the old equipment. And I think also, just to bring back my previous point, I think the reason that it's old equipment as well is because, again, it reinforces the idea that I saw, or rather I put across previously, that a lot of startups, even if it's just you going personally, you probably inherited at least something or another, or got some kind of cash pot to help you from say your parents, first tablet that you bought when you were trying to draw, something like that, or you just inherit. So I think that's a part of it also as well.
All right. Here's a weird theory.
Oh boy. If you end up saying that, the final episode of A's real world, they just become real people and it turns into live action, I don't want you to say that, because there's not a 0% chance of that happening. God damn it.
All right. What if Navy Cherub?
Boy.
What if Shadon?
No.
The anime.
No.
itself, not Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken, but the anime that the girls are going to create.
Oh my god.
Is the main character of the isekai.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something different then. Oh, shit. I was building myself up.
What did you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to say that the anime that they're making is actually what we're seeing right now, and that it's kind of like a biograph.
Well, I mean, there's always... They could go that route. I feel that would be kind of a... Not a cop-out, but like, I feel that would be very conventional. Like, I've seen that movie before.
Yeah, I know.
But that's the only thing I could think of when the isekai thing was brought up, that the anime itself has been transported to this world where it's made so differently and weirdly, and like, how is it going to get through this process? But yeah, I as far as this question goes, like Dr. Stone, I think that's an interesting and fair comparison, because Dr. Stone is very much like, instead of systematically and formally, at least, and I admit I haven't like seen and read a whole bunch of Stone. I've read some chapters, but what it seems like to me is, a more scattershot approach, like pointing out different kind of things that are necessary for society, and then highlighting them and talking about the science behind them, and then kind of rediscovering them. And again, it's less linear. And that has been how it's felt in some ways about Eizouken up to this point. They haven't been like, all right, how do we make an anime? Let's start from step one, this. Kanamori has kind of tried to like shove the other two into that really formal structure, but they've been pushing back against it really hard. And I think that
Kanamori, by the way, says in this episode, maybe it's not the best time for me to crush their enthusiasm.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, showing that wisdom beyond her years.
Very wise, very wise. And I think what I'm taking from the show anyway is that there's a lot of different ways to I don't want to say skin the cat, because I don't really enjoy that expression, but there's more than one way to approach something. Like there's a lot of different valid and appropriate ways to do a creative project. And rather than so this is a sports thing that drives me.
Sports.
It's real sport. Coming at you now from the Sport Factory in Sportania.
Sports screwed up our Vinland Saga schedule, and now you're willingly evoking sports or invoking sports in this discussion here. Like, it's just going to keep destroying things, man. Why would you do this?
Look, that was a specific sport. Was that the rugby? Was that the rugby? Anyway, but this is at the sort of conceptual level of sport. And I think you'll appreciate this, because this is one of those things that is relevant to a lot of different workforces. And a thing I love about sports, Shadon, is like that it basically is like the supervisor sort of upper board level, and then the workforce, that relationship made totally public and is really transparent for everyone to see. And many times what happens in sport is there is a system in place of how things are done, and personnel are acquired based on all kinds of different talent and everything like that, but oftentimes without regard to how they will fit in the system, and then they are forced to fit in the system. The system will not change or mold around them. It's very much like, all right, team of players, you will be doing this. And I don't care if it maximizes your efficiency or your output or your creativity or your happiness. We will be doing this, right? And I think the best coaches and organizations in sport actually acquire their personnel in terms of how they will fit together as a group. And then they say, what does our staff look like, and how can we make a system around them that maximizes their abilities? And I feel like this is kind of, in a way, what I'm taking from Eizouken is that, like you said, Kanamori understands structure. She's very level-headed and practical-minded and knows, like, okay, we have to get things done. There are deadlines. But she sees that the enthusiasm of her crew is really important and does not want to destroy it by making them like participate in a process that would kill it.
Yeah, I mean, just to extrapolate from what you said there about, like, that's your player relationship there. What's the more formal, more rigid, like, expansion of that? What's the next level? That's where it starts acting more like a military. And that's the point where, of course, obviously things stop being fun. So I can understand, like, Kanamori, like, having to do this really fine balance here of, okay, I want to keep them on track because otherwise they're never going to get it done. This episode, butterflies, that's it. That's all it takes. Yeah. It takes one insect and they just lose their minds over it. And then it just takes a raccoon and lose their minds over it. It's madness.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, like, again, her wisdom here, recognizing, hey, if they don't have any enthusiasm, like, for what they're doing, they're either not going to get it done anyway, or what they're going to produce is crap ever.
Yeah. You got to help them stay on task, sure, but, like, yeah, don't force them into a rigid structure that is not going to, like you said, maximize the work or their own happiness. And then, and when you're being very cynical about it, all that stuff is going to affect the economics too. It's going to affect the net gain, the bottom line, right? So you want to care, about that for those reasons if you're Kanamori. So yeah, I think the show is sort of celebrating that when you're doing a creative project, the structure of the project and the way that you carry it out can be done a whole bunch of different ways depending on who you have working on it. And it's important to maximize their skills and their happiness and not try to force them into something else. Well,
yep. Which is important. That's something I'm going to address soon enough.
All right. Thank you,
anyway,
David.
Indeed. Thank you, David. So next question. This one comes from Yukinon. Shouts to Yuki in the chat. Who continues to bring up Franks and all that stuff every time just to try and get a rise out of me. It won't happen. I promise you. Cool as a cucumber, me.
Right.
Completely ice cold.
Sure.
For now, anyway.
For now.
So, for Eizouken number 3, at the end of the episode, a lot of the focus is placed on different types of animation and how animators have preferences in what they'd like to draw. For example, Masaki wanting to go into character animation, detailed movement, expression, etc., etc. What kind or type of animation do you pay more attention to? So this is more of a personal question for both of us. That's a very good question because I think that I can't really divorce the answer from necessarily the context of the show itself that we're looking at. If it's a very slow-paced, like, mood piece, for example, I won't particularly necessarily be paying attention too much to the characters, but again, it might be depending on it. I'll draw on some of my own experience here because I've only yesterday made my way through or halfway through Made in Abyss, which has been recommended to me. If you want my too long didn't read review of that, very good. Less of the crude elements, please.
Please, yeah.
Completely and utterly unnecessary. For the most part, I'll talk about it. So, here's the thing, right? Made in Abyss, when it's not being about piss. Made in piss, basically.
Made in piss.
made in piss. When it's not being about that, it is essentially a world-building piece. It's all about, the environment of the Abyss itself, the many layers to it, and the way the characters react to it as they go along. The character animation for me in Made in Abyss is fine, but I don't really care about it in that context, even if it were great, because it's not really necessary. I mean, the character's work is certainly a part of it, but a lot of the focus is on the world and them exploring these unknown environments, these things that they have read about but have never seen firsthand, and by proxy, we haven't either. And then that also in turn goes into the element of the monster designs. Like, there are creatures in the Abyss, of course, very dangerous creatures. There's like a corpse sweeper. What is a corpse sweep mask? It mimics the voice of the person it's eating alive to try and draw more people in to help them. And then, of course, there are the monkeys as well. Oh, I know, Dana. I know, Bob. I know that this show is only going to get worse in terms of like all the awful shit that's it. But well, I'm in halfway now.
You're in too
I'm
deep.
committed. I mean, God, I'm gonna sound like quoting like Kevin Bacon here from Tremors or some shit. But anyway, no, the thing about the creatures though is that they're animated very differently from the characters, and they don't seem to have any like noticeable outline. They're very rough and fuzzy, and I think that works great in the context of Made in the Abyss because Made in the Abyss. Sorry, Made in the Abyss. I mean to say Made in the Abyss because they are presented in some way almost as like intangible things out of a child's nightmare. It fits the mood that they're going for and also the characters that they have as their protagonists. So to answer your question in a kind of roundabout way, it depends on what I'm watching. If you want an overall answer from me, I am probably more into character stuff, to be honest. Like, I can certainly appreciate good world building, but I find that often good world building is a product not necessarily of how it's animated, but more just how it looks. Like, you can sell me on a still background image pretty easily. I mean, Somali and the Forest Spirit being a good example from this season, where, okay, the backgrounds aren't necessarily animated, but they very clearly have had a lot of love and focus into making them look like unique vistas that seem enchanting and unreal to us. So, yeah, I would probably go with character animation for me, because that's also, I mean, beyond simply just when we see stuff like in Eizouken 3, where it's about, like, actually fighting, like with a sword, for example, there are also things like I mentioned when I was covering Beastars on Twitter, like, how characters like look away from each other when they don't want to like make eye contact, fidgety, nervous behavior. A lot of like what informs interactions between characters is not just what they say; it's also how they act. I mean, look at me right now, hand gestures. No one is physically here in the room with me, of course. At least apart from you in the corner, you can fuck off. Mystery man in the mask there. But nonetheless, like it's part of our body language, just inherently who human beings to gesticulate a lot when we talk. I mean, I think this was something that I spoke about on what was it?
I know we talked about this before.
Yeah, we talked about this before. But yeah, so that's why I think the character animation keen simply selling big fights. It's keen selling the small dramatic moments and the way in which a lot of things can be told simply through how characters react when they're trying to discuss something uncomfortable or difficult.
I guess my answer is like hugely a cop-out answer, and that's like whatever is being emphasized at the moment, whatever is done particularly well. Like, if the show is going to do a bunch of wide shots, then I'm going to look at the backgrounds and the detail therein, and I think, and if they're going to do a bunch of like close-ups and like tight shots, then it's harder to focus on the backgrounds. I think as I've gotten older, I've looked at backgrounds more. When I was younger, like, and when I say younger, I mean like late teens, early 20s, like early part of my anime fandom, like I really didn't focus on the backgrounds very much at all. And part of that probably has to do with the anime that was coming out at the time. A lot of the like, the Digipaint and other primitive CG tools they were using made for some pretty ugly backgrounds for kind of your average anime. But these days, like, it's gotten way better. As you cited things like Somali. Made in Abyss is great at backgrounds and objects. And Toilet Bound Hanako-kun.
The least appealing sounding show. I have it on good authority from Doc at the very least.
It's great.
It's actually great.
It's really fun.
Something else we need to have a look at. Although I can't obviously bring that up in polite conversation.
No, you can just say.
What did you watch at the weekend, Shads? Like, I mean, I caught like some random live action TV show. I was watching something on the CW. What about you? Oh, Toilet Bound Hanako-kun.
Yeah. I would just go, and I tweeted about that. I think I would probably just say Hanako-kun, and if someone asked me about it, I'd be like, well, it's about a ghost who lives in the bathroom. But then you'd say that's not a good way to go either. But anyway, back to the question. I think when I started watching older anime, I think that's when I really actually started to pay attention more to detail in the backgrounds, like. And you kind of can't help it when you watch Macross Do You Remember Love? Because, like, I mean, just that opening animation where all the different rooms are lighting up on the Macross. It's amazing. And like, God, just everything about that show, all the mechanical movement, it's just gorgeous, unbelievable. And then like you have stuff. There's an OAV called Area 88 about fighter planes and fighter pilots, very Top Gun-ish. But the beginning of that, there's a torch, Shadon, and they show the torch like a flame for a couple minutes as some credits go by, and it never loops. The flame animation never loops. It's just this two multiple minutes of different. Like,
I mean, that's something that you want to go back to the idea of efficiency that would be a prime candidate for doing so. You know, you make a certain animation loop for that of a certain length, and then just use it, because it's not like, you know, you're watching a character like doing emotion while talking that makes it look really robotic. Just fire. But hey, kudos to them for doing that. All right, so I hope that answers your question, Yukan. Thank you very much for chucking it our way. And lastly, but not leastly, this comes from Go Atomic Robot. What anime/action sequence would you like to see the girls act out when they enter the Graces world? I'm going to go right ahead with this one. I want to see Asuka's version of the Macross fireworks. You know that would be some top flight shit.
That would be incredible. Yeah, that would be really fucking cool. I definitely want to see.
Oh no, I have one
the
more.
The gunbuster, like the ship rising from like a space cloud or something with giant robot.
Mizusaki's just on top like that.
Exactly, and then one of the pilots standing on top of the robot with arms crossed. The very Gurren Lagann, very everything Gainax has ever done with the robots, and even like I'd want the music, like dun 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 dun, like the whole spiel.
Can we get Kanamori arriving at the film and doing the Akira bike pullover? And Doc has disappeared into the earth.
Oh, sweet lord. The only thing good about the first episode of Punchline was the reference to that Akira bike moment.
Yeah, I would be up for that. Like, the thing is, right, in fact, I'll broaden this question out to those in the chat. Like, if everyone here wants to throw in their thoughts on what they'd like to see, a reference to, I mean, my God, like...
Sword of the Stranger is a good one, Andy.
We've got some great ones here.
That movie has the best fight scene I've ever seen in an anime. And is it 10 years old at this point? Probably not quite. It's probably like 7-8 years old, but still, the climactic fight scene between the stranger and the blonde antagonist is like my favorite anime fight scene.
Well, obviously, we could also go with, if they wanted to get 30 yen by having, Asuka fall from a distance, then we need to have a repeat of, Greenbird from Cowboy Bebop.
Oh my God, that would be epic.
But they need to then license the song, right? Here's I see this, right. You have them license the song, and it's just playing, and Asuka's falling, and it's just drawn Cowboy Bebop style for a little bit, and then as soon as she hits the ground, just hard cut back to the regular style, and the music just completely stops, and with the crashing of fractured metal or whatever. I reckon that'd be great. Yukinon's made a great one. Let's have Asuka's relay the greatness of animation by doing Marco from Kill la Kill's Hallelujah moment. That would be great.
What if Kanamori gets to do the Bright Noah slap on Amuro, played by Mizusaki, and then Mizusaki's like, "My father didn't even hit me."
Oh man!
Stay on task, goddammit. That would rule.
I don't know if we'll. I mean, we are 3 episodes necessarily specific anime or films like we did with Future Boy Conan in the first one. I would still like that. I think that would be neat, but I also appreciate that this show does need to have its own identity, and in turn, the characters need to have their own identity in terms of the worlds they create and the things that they envision, which is also key for something I'll be talking about in a little while. But yeah, if we can get some of those iconic anime bike slide, for example. I think that would be great. All right, I think that brings us to the end of that question. So thank you very much. Questions. Always good to have it here.
Yeah,
go on.
Completely. Before we continue with our talking points, can we pause for just a moment to take a quick break? Take a break on our end, reset the call, all that kind of stuff. So we'll be back in a bit.
Easy breeze, everyone. We're back. Doc has just, finished doing his own secret anime pre-production notes here. We're going to make an anime on how to make a podcast.
Oh,
that's
boy.
That's going to be that'll be a thing. This is called noise reduction.
First, we have to learn how to make a podcast, I think.
Well, that's true. Yeah, we've been going out for 4 years now. We still haven't figured that out.
No.
Anyway, so yes, thank you to all our patrons there for chucking in questions. If you yourself would like to get involved in asking us questions about the shows we cover week on week, which is currently Eizouken and Julia Richard, do feel free to check our Patreon. Get yourself on the $3 tier or higher. Get you access to to Discord, where you can ask us these questions. Get access to our pods early week on week, as well as other great features. Check them out. Right. So, talking points. I've got a big one I want to lead into here, and I'm going to elaborate on stuff that I've kind of hinted at before, which is, I firstly don't think that Eizouken, as I previously had stated, or I've wondered, is going to turn out to be a deeply serious drama in the end. I think it's too lighthearted for that. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. But that doesn't mean it isn't doing some real subtle character building through the actual use of its animation and the fantasy worlds that these three create, which I really, really appreciate. That's its unique thing, and it's actually using that not just to simply wow us with visuals and the joy of the creative process, but it's actually educating us about the characters too. So just to give you again a little bit of a pace setter here, to get everything in mind. I did mention before that Mizuzaki, we see the reminders of her, on the advertisements that she is quite famous. And that in turn then brings us back to what we learned in the first episode about how her parents wanted her to become an actress, whereas she didn't want to pretend to be someone she's not by pretending to be someone she's not. Just saying. What I really liked about this is, if you think about it, why do Asakusa and Mizuzaki have the differences in what they want to animate? Why do they have different, specialities, so to speak? Now, on some level, you could argue, well, that's necessary, because if we had two characters who were solely into backgrounds, then this show wouldn't be anywhere near as interesting. And there's a certain grain of truth to that, absolutely. But think about it, right? Why does Miyazaki like end up creating a character who stands alone fighting against this faceless enemy? You know? Because it's actually a little bit of her in it, would you believe?
Mm-hmm.
She's after all, like standing up against the authority that is her parents and in turn the goons that they hire, try to dictate her life for her.
Hmm.
And so she's fighting against this tank that Asakusa has created. And I think that's a really, really neat insight into her mindset. That this is why she wants to animate that sort of stuff, not just for the sake of like necessarily getting all the realism and the technicalities in like that we've seen before, but also as I think it reflects a little bit of her life experience. I mean, in writing, like you're always told write from what you know. Now, granted, of course, that doesn't mean you can't write sci-fi, for example, or fantasy. But I do think like that a lot of our experiences do bleed through into works that we create, even if we're not necessarily aware of them. On a conscious level. I mean, I don't think, for example, when she drew the girl with the machete, that it was deliberately meant to be her. But I do think it symbolizes her in some way, which I think is a really, really neat way of developing her character and what she wants to prove by doing this in the first place. But then, on top of that, let's also talk about Asakusa as well. I mean, actually, before we get that, the reason I brought the adverts, that's what we see Miyazaki as presented by the world itself, like the real world. But that's complete fiction of itself, of course. Mm-hmm. Whereas the person that she really wants to be is the girl with the machete, mm-hmm. which I think is super neat. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So with Asakusa, though, like, why is Asakusa interested in technology rather than, characters? And I think that what I really like about her is, again, this is a reflection on her history, because she has mentioned a couple of times, this has been reinforced through discussions of money and such, that she is from a working class family. She's not wealthy. If you don't, like, for example, ever get on a plane in your lifetime because you are that poor that you've never had the chance to, like, travel, like, elsewhere, then I can imagine for someone like her with a vivid imagination that she would think a lot about flying machines and such and technology and big concepts like this. Like, look at how cool this thing is. It's got all these features. Like, whereas, like, for example, with Miyazaki, who's probably grown up with all the luxury, all the life's luxuries, all the mod cons, all the kit, like, probably had tablets, computers. I mean, heck, there's a reminder in this episode of how her allowance was like what she got in third grade. That was the same as the 30,000 yen Asakusa got for violently injuring herself. So I can see how that's influenced her. That someone who has grown up without much of her own, without all the mod cons, so to speak, of like a wealthy upbringing. That in turn her imagination would lead her to dream of like traveling to other places that otherwise she's never been to in reality. And funnily enough, that then gels with the actual introduction we get for traveling to a new place and being so enamored of it. When you don't really ever get to leave the place you're in for any length of time or see strange new locales, is it unreasonable to see that she would act in such a way when thinking of these worlds as to always like create brand new ones where she's exploring?
Yeah.
This is one of Eizouken's great, I mean, I'm a big like character writing kind of guy. And like I say, I don't think this is going to be a deep drama. It shouldn't be. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But that doesn't mean there aren't things that you can like read into and pick out from the way it's like involving these characters and what they want to get out of the animation and what they want to create and how it is informed from their worldviews and their past experiences. That is fucking genius, in my opinion. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, this is Yuasa we're talking about here. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of thing is going to definitely be considered. I think the connections between, like you said, personality, experience, and their what they like doing in animation is considered here and is thought out, and it's nice to see that sort of detail thought about. And and Mizu's parents wanting her to become an actor, right, in her mind she's going to be an actor. You know what I mean? Like, she's going to be doing that. Like, she thinks that animation is acting. It's just the animator is getting to act out all these various parts on paper, right? And because they can control the movement, the framing sometimes, that it is the same as acting, but not just for bodies, but for objects and for fantastical things and all sorts of items. And so, like you said, write what you know, that kind of thing. That's here too in this for her. And I love the point about, I love the point that you made about like, Mizu and what her family wants her to be is shown on an image. It's just total fiction. Like you said, it is a sort of vertical slice of her personality. It is a put on from her even then. But it's like in an image. It's an abstract image. Who she really wants to be is something to do with abstract images as well. It's just a very different kind, and it's something that you'd think of intuitively as more fantastical, but the girl with the machete represents way more of what she's like.
Lone wanderer standing against the world,
versus someone who has it all together and is like totally glamorous all the time and a ball of charisma. Yeah,
someone who has self-direction, does what they want to do. I mean, if you know, when they're drawing the concepts of the girl for the first time, I actually thought that looks a little bit like her.
Totally, I thought so too.
I mean, she is the character designer after all.
Yeah.
It all fits together, and I think that's really neat. I mean, we've had instances before, like we were talking about Vinland Saga and how Makoto Yukimura, who himself is a father, was talking about fatherhood and his experiences bled into the actual material as such. So it's not unusual. I mean, we've covered this recently, but I love how even for a lighthearted show like this, it still gets those little moments in that remind you of the characters and helps build on them using its own unique thing. It isn't something they simply told to us. It's shown to us in Eizouken's own wonderful way, and I think that's great. More of that, please. I have another thing that I'll tell you about in a minute, which relates to Kanamori and what we also learn about her in this episode.
Okay.
Over to you firstly, Doc.
Okay. On this episode as a whole, I'm slightly of two minds on it. Which isn't to say that it's a like versus dislike. Overall, I really like what this is, and certainly the show as a whole. But I was thinking a couple different thoughts about episode 3. And one is that the first half of the episode felt a little bit like running back episode 2. If the scenarios are different. We get the space thing, and it's different in the detail and execution of those details, but the bullet points and outline feel the same. You know what I mean? It feels like I was starting to think by the midpoint of the episode, is this the thing that Eizouken has? Is this the big idea that it's going to do, is have the girls kind of try to struggle and make a thing or accomplish a task, an incremental task when it comes to making anime, and in the midst of that struggle, 2 of the 3 of them will pull the whole entire group into the imaginary world, the greatest world, and we'll get to see some cool stuff there. Is that the thing that's going to happen? Now, the second part of the episode, with this whole deadline to have a completed project to present to the school board or the budget committee or whatever, that is definitely a new wrinkle, and that adds a different that puts a different spin on it. There's more at stake. There's a sense of urgency, and I think that is a nice addition of some new elements to the formula here. Having said all that, I think what I'm about to say may sound like it runs counter to that, and I'm trying to reconcile these two opinions here, Shadon.
Right, I've got hold my desk. I wish I had a seat. In fact, I'm just gonna pretend this is Eizouken now. Just right, seatbelts on. Okay. I'm ready. Launch the missiles.
All right. So I just said that for part of the episode, I was like, oh, is this it? And then, oh, there's some new stuff. Well, here's the thing. you've talked about before, and I agreed at the time, needing.
And then you realize I was damn wrong. He's chatting
needing.
shit all this time.
Oh
I
my
knew
God,
it.
what was I thinking? Why did I agree to that? That the show maybe kind of was leading up to or needed some conflict.
I'd argue there already has been a tiny bit of it, a very small amount.
Mm-hmm. Well,
there is initial friction between Mizuzaki and Asuku's like about what they want to do, but then of course Kanamori, peacemaker extraordinaire, comes in and says, "Why not both?"
Yeah, the living, breathing vibe check that is Kanamori. Well, maybe conflict is the wrong word, but
Drama.
drama,
Interpersonal, like,
disagreement, and also
friction.
like this whole So I think we're talking about the idea of like not letting them play in the make believe world the whole time. You have to come back to the real world and get stuff done.
Yep.
And I just want to take this moment to say, I know, like, I'm mad at myself for agreeing with that take.
Here we go. Go on.
I am some fuck that noise.
Tell me more.
Well, from a personal point of view, what I want from the show is like I actually don't want there to exist some sort of moment where, and then the girl's enthusiasm was finally dampened. You know what I mean?
It's just gone. Yeah.
And then they were depressed and had to rally back. Like, I this week, today, January 21st, 2020, that's not what I want from this show. The show is feeding me through their enthusiasm and imagination. And more so than like, here's like a realistic portrayal of how anime gets done. Like, that stuff is interesting, and like I'm good with like that being bits and pieces of the show. But
it also isn't a documentary. It needs to have something else.
I don't want to go away from the greatest world. And again, this may sound contradictory to what I was saying, because I was just saying the first half was a little bit like, we're just running it back again. But they actually, in episode 1 and 2 and the second half of episode 3, I think they kept doing, like, going to the greatest world, doing their vivid kind of play of the imagination, but it was really different each time. I think there's a way that you can keep doing this without it feeling repetitive, and that's what I want. Like, that is what nourishes me in the show, is the characters playing. The characters,
play, yeah.
Like,
because that's often what it is, actually, or what it was in the early episode. It wasn't even creating a product; it was just play, creative synthesis,
and
nerding out, if you will.
Yeah, and just how the power of that can unite these really different people. I mean, Mizu would not be in the same orbit as Asakusa.
Oh, you're right.
Without that, like, because she's a
class
Instagram
divided
model.
and such, yeah.
And Kanamori has a different set of interests and priorities, but like, I think this is what you're going to talk about next. Even she gets pulled in, like, she can't stop the gravity of the play.
You're right.
It's too much for her, And I love that. That is what I love about the show the most.
If I may address your point, like, I absolutely do agree with you that, like, I think as I've watched more and more of this show, that I don't want it to go full blown like grimdark, like, In fact, no, you know what I'm going to compare it to, because that in itself is a very wonderfully animated show, and we actually mentioned the studio made for. Let's talk about Sound Euphonium. Like, Sound Euphonium is in some way kind of like Eizouken plot-wise a little bit, by which I mean we have an end goal. We've got a certain amount of time to do it in. There is a lot of, like, creative differences and such that we have to work over, etc., etc. Now, obviously, there's no flights of fantasy and stuff in that, unless you want to talk, like, about I can't remember her name now. God. I'll rewatch Sound Euphonium, and then I'll pretend that I got
the main character you're talking about.
Yes.
That's
it's been a very long
Kimiko,
time.
I believe.
Kumiko, there we go.
Yeah.
Kimiko, like, unless, like, talk about Kimiko, like, eyeing up Reina every now and again, whatever. But anyway,
It's all about Asuka.
it
all
is.
about
It
Asuka,
is
baby.
easy peasy lemon
The
squeezy.
best one.
I'm just saying. But anyway, like that show, like, otherwise needed that to operate because it was otherwise, just going to be, hey, we played a song and it works. But like in the case of Eizouken, like I'm willing to, like, dial back on, wanting it to be a full blown drama. But I do think that needs to happen because the show has already, by its own admission, stressed that there are difficulties in getting things off the ground. Money is one of them. Having the necessary facilities and necessary support, having, like, a focus, not like a laser focus to the point where it loses, like, the enthusiasm you spoke about, but at least having a sense of structure in how you want to create the thing that you're going to create. So I think it would be a little hypocritical and actually to the show's detriment if it was completely conflict free, because it is admitting to us through the things it's shown us that it's not an easy thing to create an anime, not by a long shot. I mean, Kanamori, in her own, like, sardonic way, did say, hey, you've got to work for 50 days and 50 nights straight if you want to do a full-blown thing. Good luck with that. So I think it is going to be necessary to have some conflicts in this. And I don't mean, like, full-blown, like, fighting each other or anything like that. But there's going to need to be some butting of heads. That's a necessary part of creating any project is to begin with.
Do you think that the conflict will just be, rather than in the group, like, group member A versus group member B, it'll be like them versus the deadline, or them versus
the MIBs,
some of the MIBs, or I don't know, some kind of external force rather than amongst themselves.
That was the episode 1 thing that I talked about, where the external force was the thing that ultimately, infiltrated the world that they created with the dragonfly. And then in episode 2, the external force was like the weather, for example. The fragile, like how external forces, like, leave this, like, thing that they've crunched up but haven't made real or solid yet. Like, they're so fragile.
3 is the building.
well, yeah, like, the building itself that looks like a piece of shit.
It's so bad.
So yeah, I think that is going to be necessary to have some conflict. But when I say conflict, I don't, again, mean like they're literally yelling each other's faces. There's tears everywhere, anything like that. Where it goes sound euphonium levels of, like, people yelling at each other.
Toradora.
Yeah,
the yelling fights. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, it doesn't need to be that. But as I say, I think it would be actually, contradictory of the show if it didn't have that all, because it has been so honest with us thus far of, hey, do you want to know how they got this start? They inherited a load of tools that they found in the shed. They managed to get some money through injuring one of themselves. They had hand-me-downs from the wealthy member of the group, and the practical reality of making a show is such that they've had to downscale their ambitions significantly to just doing a 5-minute piece in time for this, like, this committee.
3-minute piece before it was all said and done, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So again, like, that's why I think it's necessary to have a bit of conflict, because otherwise, if there was no conflict, they would just create anything they wanted.
What's wrong with that?
There isn't anything wrong with that, but I think it would also be disingenuous, like, to. I mean,
I hear you though. I hear what you're saying.
I think Saka people in particular would be like, this doesn't reflect the whatsoever. It's completely impossible to do it in this time frame or whatever.
Yeah, well, and they do say, like, we can't do 5 minutes because you would have to work 51 days without sleep, according to, like, the math of 12 frames per second or whatever. But, like,
yeah, which you and I have discussed before. I've gone into those calculations on this podcast at various points.
I think, yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I think the nod that it made last episode to pay and the sort of larger situation looming over anime about the working conditions and the unfair pay probably, like, to me indicates that, yeah, they share your concern and won't want to show it as, like, here's a magical thing where you can do whatever. I'm sure they'll illustrate the fact that this is hard fucking work. I guess, yeah, I don't want them to be crushed.
No,
I don't
nor
want,
do I, for that
you know what
matter.
I mean? Like, I don't want, like they've laid, I feel like that if in the hands of a different person, you know, they could take the seeds laid here between Kanamori and Mizusaki and like really lean into that conflict of making the kind of art I want versus making a product that will impact people so you can get more money to make more stuff.
Yeah.
Like that groundwork has been laid, but my question is just like how far is it going to go into that? And I just like the drama is not what I want to see from this show. I want this
No.
group to remain tight, and I want them to continue to imagine. I want them to continue to create and not have their creative spirit stifled.
No, I'm in agreement. I mean, speaking as someone who himself, like, whose enthusiasm for writing burned out a while ago, which this show has rekindled a little bit. If I ever get the time, I will probably go and give it another go at. Um, I do agree with you from that perspective that it's nice to, like have unchallenged creativity be the thing is and just be embraced and adored for, for that.
Yeah.
Um, it's difficult. It depends, I think, really on who you are as a person and how you feel about what the show should be telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I'm just speaking for me, by the way.
yeah, and I'm sure people similarly feel might very often. In fact, you can tell us in chat how you might feel. Like, do you want, maybe it's even a poll we could do. Like, do you want, should there be conflicts in the show in order to make it more authentic to like the difficulties of creating an anime, or should it simply be a celebration of the creative spirit without any real challenge, so to speak? I again certainly speaking for myself, don't want it to be like a dour, like big like angry drama fest, when things really go to pot. But at the same time, don't want it to be challenge free because again, think that would be disingenuous to what the show is trying to get across, which is, as it's already demonstrated, there is a lot of difficulty. I mean, the amount of work they got to put in to create this thing like on their own, that's gonna be difficult. I mean, you can all say best, maybe not conflict, but obstacles, momentary things.
Well, it's my opinion that they've had an obstacle, I think every episode. There's just been an external one, right? The building, the MIBs,
the heavy beard,
the deadline, the looming deadline, and everything this time. So I don't think that there's a want of those. So I think we're all set there. But I guess the question is, do you think that interpersonal conflict in the group is a thing that they should do?
I think, well, the thing is, like, I mean, I've had arguments with friends in the past about stuff, and we've come out stronger for it. I'm not saying that you necessarily have to go through it in order to get the best results out of something.
Mm-hmm.
But it has happened. It is a reality of, collaborative process. As people who have ever gone to university and, like, tried to do group projects can attest to. They're a fucker. You always get that one prick who doesn't actually contribute anything to the entire project. Just sits there, bums up every single, week. Puts, just like doesn't do anything, and then he gets equal credit. Piss off.
That's the right. Sure.
So, yeah, exactly. So we'll see. I'm still
in disagree there.
I think the show, if it's going to make that work, though, really does need to strike a balance. But I can't also see how it's going to suddenly veer into like a much more serious tone it already has. I think it's got it just right at the moment, to be honest. It's just introducing different layers of it, different ways in which it works. And indeed, like I say, Mizusaki and Asuka's are like they have their differences of like what they want to animate, and Mizusaki seems pretty pumped about defending her point on that she wants to do this particular thing. Mm-hmm. But then, as you say, Kanamori steps in and says, why don't we do both?
I think if I'm going to be super reductive here.
Oh, man.
Really boil it down. The feeling that we get from this show has so far been largely like it's been a delight. It's been
yes.
Very joyful. And the question is do the people making it want that to shift and want the audience to feel stress? And I don't want to experience that as an audience member, and I think the interpersonal conflict would create that feeling. And when you boil it down to something as simple as what's the feeling we want to evoke from the show, then I think, I hope that the creators share my feeling on it. And again, I'm only talking for me. I'm not talking about what will be best for the show or
don't listen to the
ball.
Don't listen to him. He is a doomsayer. He is a prophet of the end times.
I think even more so than like, is this sort of realistic? Because you're never, like you said, you're never going to get documentary levels of realism.
No,
but I think the greater concern, I think, should be like, how do we want to leave our audience? Like, what do we want them coming away with? And I'd like for it to continue to be.
We don't want a Vinland Saga episode 24 again.
No, indeed not.
Which was still great in its own right. Don't get the show, would of course builds up to that. Okay, so next point from me, and this is something that you very nicely set up for me, is if there's one thing we've learned about Kanamori throughout the show thus far, she has always had the right perspective, generally speaking. Like, she's got like the good like middle ground of like making them work, stay focused on the task at hand, but also accepts that that Mizuzaki and Asakusa's like creative spirits, they should be nurtured and allowed to roll with it rather than being stifled. So you might think that she's herself like completely flawless or unable to like be distracted by the same things that they are. But as we see in this episode, she gets so embroiled in the spaceship fantasy when she breaks through the wall that she has no idea they've already solved their own problem. Of them trying to get down from the roof. She's not immune. We get to see yet another side to her, that she's, got her own flaws, and that she, for all of her pragmatism, all of her let's stay on task here, she herself can have the horse blinders on a little bit, too much. Yes, to the point where she will jump through a wall.
So great.
I mean,
what the fuck?
Why
did she not use the door?
I mean, walls are just a suggestion to her. Let's be honest.
Was the door blocked by the desk? Why did she dive through the wall?
She may not have noticed. Like, she just thought maybe they were in such desperate need that she would just try and get outside as quickly as possible. Which, like I say, no clip engaged. Let's go.
I mean, again, vote Kanamori 2020. Write it on your ballot.
Yep. So we again learn that through the the animation here and like the blending of the fantasy world and the real one. That hey, she's got her own flaws as well. She's just as capable of like being lost in a flight of fantasy as the rest of them. But on top of that, I need to know Asakusa as well and the lunch scene, because she in turn like is very practical about what they need to do. Like, we need to fund with storyboards and a script, and that's completely in contrast to what we saw earlier, which was that she was distracted by a butterfly and a raccoon, and then went on a long, like, voyage through space trying to like paint, her space shuttle. When the chips are down, like when she's actually got someone helping her focus, Asakusa is completely on point with what needs to be done. She then is the one who's offering the practicalities up, as opposed to Kanamori. So we again get to see different shades of the characters, and that they're not always completely either, distracted by the creative process or deaf to it, as we might see with Kanamori, but rather it's a moment by moment thing, and these are flaws that they could potentially then have to overcome or work together with, to try and mitigate so they can get the thing done. Small little things like that, but they're still there, and they still help, show that, like help develop them and show different sides to them. And I, again, think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, allow me to talk to you about what I think may be the most important, if not now, then as the show kind of endures over time, the most important arc in the show.
Oh boy!
And
is it going to be the struggle of Uranium Beard Man?
It's not, unfortunately. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's my relatable content.
Is he a rock? He's a rock man.
Oh no.
Well, this won't necessarily be relatable, but more like perhaps didactic in some sense. But so we have, like you said, the arc of how anime is made. We're learning over time. We have the character arcs, how they're growing. what this arc that I'm speaking of, one that really interests me is like what anime does. You could say the value of anime, but maybe like the capability, the different kinds of things the anime can do. Why has animation as an art form become popular, and why has it endured over time? Well, why is it important? So we've seen before how it can take you to imaginary worlds. We talked about in our episode 1 how Asakusa has this perspective where she can show the unique qualities of really ordinary objects or locales or neighborhoods, and show like they're extraordinary, if not in the empirical space, like in my mind, and I will like communicate that to you, right? In this episode, we get to hear Mizusaki talk about how animation can make the ordinary extraordinary when it comes to movement. That's quite right. When it comes to movement, and specifically the movement of people, which I think is a huge kind of step, because up to this point we've kind of talked about how anime or animation can make the world, nature, inanimate objects bright and wondrous and special. But this is actually a big move that, like, saying anime can make the ordinary extraordinary when it comes to the way people move, like, you need people for that. So anime can actually help us shake our head and look at actual people in a different way in our actual lives. Like, it can begin with something as simple as, like, the way their arms moving. Like, wow, like, I never really thought about, like, how people move around. Or I never really thought about, like, how someone might hold something when they're a certain way. And then if a person is thinking, if a person is engaged with that thought, that could go to a lot of really good and productive places in terms of getting us as people to notice each other. We might have the more of this arc in future talking about how people interact with each other, or how people's emotions are
body language and such.
Yeah, or how people talk to each other. So animation as an art form, getting to notice not just like to make motion this really cool thing, that this mundane thing that we take for granted because we all do it, be like, this is amazing and special. Like, yes, they do that, but that's, I think, the sort of bare minimum of what they do. I think they open up this whole door of possibility here for animation is like a vehicle for artists and for regular people to take notice of other people. And, like, once you walk through that door, like, you have taken the first step to like all kinds of ways that animation can actually, like, bring people together.
And now you reminded me, like, I wanted to bring this up just as a small thing, but I love that scene of Kanamori using the chopsticks as she's discussing, like, the plan. And there's something very sinister about it in her own kind of way, which is super cool. I like that. But yeah, well, I'll elaborate on that further, and I'll say, like, the other thing, like, that is important about animation as relative to live action is escapism. Because let me put it this way, folks, right? Let me give you a mental experiment here. Let's call this a thought exercise. Let's say you have a scene written in your script of someone walking down a road. And that's it. It can be for however long you want. It's just a plain road. You can film that in live action, or you can do it in animation. What, therefore, is the difference when otherwise the scene is constructed identically, notwithstanding the medium in which it's created? I think for me, the thing about animation is that simply by it just being animated as opposed to live action, even though they are shot identically in this, like, little hypothetical I've come up with, it has an element of escapism that exceeds that of live action inherently. because it is not immediately recognizable as the real world and therefore feels like a different place. Again, this road otherwise would look exactly the same in the two hypotheticals I've come up with here. And that in turn, I think, ties into two of our characters here, which is, of course, Mizuzaki and Asakusa, which is for their own reasons, one of which is, personal repression at the hands of, you must become this thing that you were told to be, versus Asakusa, having, lived a life, of relative, not poverty, but rather, further down the socioeconomic ladder, so to speak. For them, escapism, it's the end goal, prompted for them something for them to seek out from different, circumstances on the opposite ends of the chain, if you will. And that's why I think they're both drawn to it. And I think that's why, in turn, you and I can often be drawn to it as well. Why we prefer to talk about necessarily over live action, because there is something more fantastical about an animated world than a live action one inherently, even when all the things are equal, I would say. And that's why I think that it has that power, And indeed, Navy mentioned Isekai before. Isekai is the purest distillation of that, because it is escapism inside a medium of escapism in of itself. So it fits with the characters perfectly in helping us understand why it's such an important medium and why it's something that can be quite powerful, because they themselves, they're not doing it purely for academic reasons, just because they like it for its own sake, but because we have background details that we can infer from that help inform their actions. And so I think that, again, Eizouken deliver, building on that in a kind of meta way a little bit, that's also pretty neat in its own right.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about touches on why anime is such a great medium, or animation, I should just say, is such a great medium for science fiction. Because, and anime was, was it Fred Patton, I think, that talked about anime as when trying to sell or encapsulate anime, it's this ideal of animated science fiction from Japan, that. And at the time, that was a lot of what was being made. But yeah, it lends itself to that, like you said, because immediately you have that abstraction from the real world, and without. I think without that foundational layer, it's tough. But because you have that, then you can do all sorts of fun, crazy, cool things with, the limit is your imagination in terms of what you draw, right? And but ironically enough, these things, because they're abstracted from reality, they can be these great tools to talk about our world in the same way science fiction is, right? Because there's no real corollary to those stories, but but they work for precisely that reason, right? You've talked about before why you like science fiction.
Well, I thought it was just because of the big robots and the boom booms and the pew.
I mean, the secondary reasons, not the obvious ones.
I know. But big ideas, where we can be in the future, and how technology can change people for the better or for the worse, even, how we react to that kind of thing. And I think also, if you reverse that might also be why some live action adaptations of anime works fail, because they lose that added layer of escapism. I mean, let's say Ghost in the Shell, for example. Now, that film obviously had a lot of problems in itself. I'm talking about the Scarlett Johansson one.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Mamoru Oshii.
No, I baited you. I'm a fine game player. Don't mess with me.
That film has no problems.
Well,
okay, maybe it's a little talky, but it's a great movie. But no,
you
the
got
ScarJo
basic sucker punch.
I did.
There,
I really did. Okay,
but that film has many problems. But I think that for the original, which was about the lead character, the Major, questioning her own identity and her own reality. Can I truly understand what's going on around it? The very Descartes kind of thing of how can I trust my own senses. If you then take that away and make it more grounded as something we can recognize through live action, then you do shave off the edges of that particular material inherently. Now, I must stress, folks, that there are times when live action can do incredible, escapism. Guillermo del Toro's works in particular come to mind. There is a time and a place for all mediums. I'm certainly not saying one is necessarily better than the other. But in turn, some appeal to people more than others. And, well, if you know anything about me from all I've ever talked about myself on this podcast when I might have gone a little too real, I'm always a little bit fond of escapism for that reason. So that's why I like anime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, well,
I just think, like, escapism as a term has some negative baggage. Like, I prefer, like, it's abstracted from reality because, like, not all of it, I mean, I indulge in, like, a ton of sci-fi and fantasy, but, like, a lot of the time, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm like running from the real world so much as I just enjoy being transported to other places.
Well, that's true.
It's less of an escape and more like a sort of willful, again, abstraction mentally that I'm doing.
Yeah, it's an exercise in
call me a semantic fool, if you will.
No, that's it. That's fair. And indeed, this is why some of the worst examples of isekai is at present do cater to the kind of incredibly nihilistic escapism that people are into.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think that otherwise brings us to the end of. I don't have. Doc, do you have anything else you want to throw in there?
Just some quick bits.
Oh boy.
Pouring one out to the departed 30,000 yen. Hilarious. I love that scene. The moment of silence for the 30K.
Was Asuka's insinuating that she could just injure herself again for it?
I hope not. Please don't do that.
I mean, there's no cottage industry, and she just needs to become like the new Johnny Knoxville, for fuck's sake.
Oh, I'm just saying. Jesus, yeah. Jakasu.
Oh God.
So, that scene where they are, how do you call it? When they are at the, God damn it, why did I forget her name? When they're at Asakusa's house looking at her ideas, scrapbooks, right? And they flip to the first page.
Mm-hmm.
When the music first starts playing, is that meant to be a Ghost in the Shell reference? Because that's what I immediately thought of is like the sort of gray city with all the like billboards and signs and kind of dirty. That's immediately what I thought of, and especially with the music they used.
Just missing a plume of fire, and then it could be Blade Runner. But
I know no neon though. They need the neon for the Blade Runner.
Oh, there needs to be tons of neon in Cyberpunk. I'm just saying, like, if your Cyberpunk is drab shit, miss me with that. But I don't know. I'd have to go back and have a look. But I mean,
I couldn't tell what the other ones were, if they were indeed references. I mean, the minecart one was maybe that was a Ghibli thing. No, for sure. But I think Caesar says the Neo Tokyo style is common in many anime. I just remember that particular.
It's not common in real life though. Where's my cyberpunk future?
I know, right?
Why is nothing neon around here? God fucking damn it!
I think certainly for me and my biased view in the West, Ghost in the Shell is sort of the example of that. And I've seen the movie enough times to where like that particular layout, it's not just the different elements, not just there are billboards, there are buildings, it's like the combination and specific placement looked like a shot from Gids. But Donkey Kong Country, yes, thank you. I was gonna. I'm glad somebody else said it and not me. Yeah. So, anyway, I think that might be the last little bit I have. I loved when they are the girls are wandering around the concept art in the flip book again. That's one of my favorite.
Yeah, literally, like that's such a great visual like metaphor for exploring. They are literally exploring Asuka's concepts. They're not just simply looking at, like, it'd be so easy just for, like, them to animate them pouring through the book page by page, and we have, like, an over-the-shoulder shot of, like, what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, this show, like, and Masaki Yuasa and Sai Saru and the original creator, well, they know how to, like, literally draw you, like, how it's important to draw you in literally to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, it helps sell, like, it's like I said about Smiley and the Forest Spirit, like, how the characters themselves are infused by it helps sell it to us. That is very, very important, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end. So, Doc, would you be willing to give us a recap on the polls before we close tonight's stream out?
Definitely will. Let me hit refresh to update them. And we're getting the reload. All right. We got 4 polls today. that you can vote on at Warui Deshou on Twitter. Poll number 1, is Kanamori a walking vibe check? And 100% say she be. 0 votes for she don't be. 6 days left to vote on that if you do not feel that is an accurate description of our favorite producer. Poll number 2, Kanamori 2020 question mark? 100% say we're voting yes. 0% say stay home. Poll number 3, are you two a fan of Slipknot?
Oh, that sounded wrong.
I'm going to get banned from YouTube. SLP.
Well, that's it. 90-day YouTube jail again. Thanks to... I mean, I swear like a sailor, but you had to go and push it just over the edge.
That was the gold medal that I inadvertently...
Also, your webcam is now tripping out, like, as your webcam's profanity filter kicks in.
Yeah, this ninja's about to descend, clad in the red of YouTube.
Are you going to get unregistered hypercam appear on the top right?
Mm-hmm. So this poll for this band, it's 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 say we stan, 1/3 say not my thing. And poll 4, does the show need more character conflict to honestly depict the anime creation process? 80% say no. But again, it's early days for all these polls.
Well, it's standard at this point. Like, I've got my opinion. Democracy never lies.
You've got your opinion, and then the right answer is the other thing.
Exactly.
So, those are the polls. Again, get out and vote. Warui Deshou on Twitter, and we'll read the results.
And get out and vote in general.
Yeah, in general. But we'll read the results of this lower stakes voting next week. Now, Shadon, rate the episode.
Yes, boss, I will. All right. Like every episode of Eizouken thus far, right? I mean, obviously it's indulged in all of the fantasy creations that they've come up with, like, the dragonfly firefight, and then, the bombing of that building to, like, bring the water out, get the windmill going, and also then, of course, what we've had in this episode with the spaceship and such like that. But what I also really appreciate is that it's always bringing us something new that helps flesh out this, like, process they're going through. We're getting all the technical details, we're getting the differences in, like, animation styles. And it's never, like, purely in a vacuum and so technical and dry that it's not interesting, like, to think about. Firstly, because of the way it's presented. Like, we're getting living examples of this as we go along, like, on how things differ. Like, with that amazing, like, Ronin character that Masaki comes up with that's just done, like, on grey background that looks incredible. And then it still keeps it relevant to the characters. Again, not deep character drama here. We're not talking Vinland Saga. That's not what it needs to be, and I'm totally cool with that. But it doesn't even, like, it doesn't necessarily need to do that, but it still does. Like, everything is important. I mean, I've said before, like, about shows where, like, small details matter. And they do here as well. And obviously that's got to be a big deal for a show like this. There's a creation. You've got to have a thing about the small details. But it's hitting the small details in every area, and I really, really like that. And it's still funny. Like, watching Kanamori just, like, go straight through that sheet metal like it was nothing. And then the amazing follow-up of her just, like, taking the ladder and putting up in sharp quick cuts. I mean, funnily enough, that's then actually highlighted by Mizusaki later with the discussion about the sharp cuts, like, for the tank fight. It's the same thing. You're seeing it already in the episode early on, and then you're seeing it explained later. This is all amazing, amazing stuff. I absolutely love it. It doesn't quite reach episode 1 for me, but I am going to race it equally to episode 2. So with that in mind, I will give this 4.75 Metal Slug concept arts out of 5.
Very good. So you've mentioned before, Shadon, that many times, like, you like to rewatch things to see if, like, you as a person were, like, in a different headspace when you were watching it. Oh, and I have been,
believe me.
And that affects, like, you might think a thing is better or worse on a rewatch. So this is a long way for me to intro that. I don't know if it was just me, but, like, yeah, like, the first half of this episode until the deadline was introduced, like, I don't think it was bad, but, like, the first 2 episodes of the show, episodes of the show, like, had my brain just, like, it was like a boiling pot of water just bubbling and crack, like, it's so much excitement. So much possibility. But the
Yeah,
first half,
it's never not a joy to watch this show. I'll say that much.
but the first half did not have my brain in that place. My brain felt very much like, all right, A to B, B to C, and here we go. But as you say, the execution was still great, and it was still really delightful to see. But again, just because it didn't pop for me on this day when I just watched it a few hours ago for the first and only time, I think only for that reason I'm going to have to give it a 4.5.
No, you did
Rusty
not.
helmets out of 5.
You did not.
I am.
My
Still
God,
excellent.
It's the red letter day where Doc rates something worse than me.
I know.
Holy shit. Well, there you go. Yukon's explained it all. It's the episode director that works on Guilty Crown. Although then again, the theory would be that I would rate it lower as a result. I've rated it higher.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's Stockholm syndrome. Who knows?
Could be.
I mean, you know.
But I love this episode. It was fantastic. Just not as fantastic as the previous two to me for half of it.
I mean, Doc, it is your God-given right as an American to be wrong, so you exercise that, my son. Shine on, you crazy diamond. Oh, Jesus
Salute
Christ!
To you from across the Atlantic.
I kid. There's one quick thing I'll add, by the way, that I just want to point out as a moment of positivity, which is seeing like the collective anime like Twitter sphere that like I kind of either follow or otherwise see like bleed through from retweets and osmosis and all that sort of stuff. Like, just really get behind this and seeing what people have said about how much they enjoy the show, just because it really is like pure like enthusiasm, joy, and happiness distilled into like 24 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I love that people are enjoying it so much. Like, I think that there's something very like, in fact, you know what I will say that I think I've just realized. You and I have covered a lot of shows before, like where there is that kind of drama element, which we appreciate and all that. Like, you know, for what it's worth, like,
love it.
Yeah, like in Mob Psycho, for example, like, you know, where you have like things like with Reagan and Mob, like, you know, having their, you know, tiff because Mob rightly wants to have his own, like, you know, agency and do what he wants to rather than being at Reagan's. But anyway, I'm not going to recite the plot of that. But if there's one thing that I can say like about this show that I think I also really, really appreciate, it's completely free of cynicism. It's absolutely devoid of that. And I can't think of many shows that are like, you know, completely cynicism free. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying that's a bad thing that there are shows that have that. I'm not saying this automatically makes it the best anime ever. But rather, I think that for what it's trying to tell us, which is, hey, the creative process is an incredible, like, you know, thing that human beings can do. And it's so delightful and enjoyable when we get involved in it. And in turn, we can spin something from that other people can enjoy too, as long as, you know, we try and not like, you know, we have to make it happen, of course, and that can be difficult. But it's never like, you know, bitter about it. Like, it'd be very easy for like the people at Science Saru to like put a little bit of snark here and there about like animators' wages, as we've discussed before. And that doesn't mean that isn't a problem because they don't mention it, of course. But everything that they've had so far in this show, like about the difficulties of creating anime, that's just the workload. There isn't anything about the bureaucracy or politics or anything like that. They are things that exist, don't get me wrong. But I think that, again, remembering who these characters are, the age they are at their lives, and where they're just stepping down on this path here, like, I really appreciate that even if it is going to put problems in their way, they're never of that deeply cynical nature where, you know, it's ruined by, like, you know, higher-ups or whatever getting in the way, corporate politics, office bullshit, that kind of thing. It's deeply enthusiastic about itself and the medium it lives in. And I think that's fantastic.
I agree.
So,
I think that's like the mission statement of the show, is a lot of what
damn
you just
right.
said, so.
It's the greatest world, damn it.
Yep. Yeah, there you go.
Yep. So, that's otherwise going to end it for today. Thank you very much to everyone in the audience for joining. Correcting many cock-ups with names. I will probably get some post-it notes and just like, or maybe print off like characters. You know, like print off screenshots of them and just like put post notes over them, just so I can remember who they are, rather than just like, you know. So, if you have enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to help support us, there are a couple of ways you can do it. For example, you can cover us on Patreon. If you go into patreon.com/Warui Deshou, we've got free tiers, $2, $3, $5. You can get yourself Discord access, the ability to ask us questions week on week about shows we're covering, early access to our second stream podcast, early access to other podcasts that we're doing as well, and even the potential ability to request shows for me or Docs to cover. Feel free to check that out, see what you like. If you are otherwise, checking us out, say for example, YouTube or SoundCloud, and you know what? Times are tough. Not everyone has money to spare, to support people. I understand that. If you instead want to support us another way, what you can do is you can like, subscribe, follow, share, smash the button. Don't do what Doc's doing, where he seems to be wrecking his own desk at
I almost knocked my microphone over, but I caught it right before it hit.
Yeah, we want you to support podcasts, but please don't smash your microphone in doing so. Don't follow Doc's example there. So yeah, if you want to do that, help our discoverability get us out there a little bit, I would really appreciate it.
Apple Podcast reviews, you peons, write them down. 5 snakes. Write a word.
5 snakes.
The 5 snake review.
5 snake,
I don't know where it's from.
Podcast?
So I think
this is podcast.
Well, I'll tell you where this is. So the stars. Oftentimes, when people give star ratings, they give an asterisk. You know what I mean? Did the asterisk stands in? No. I mean, it stands in place for the star. If you're literally writing 3 stars down on your keyboard, you do asterisk, 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 and the asterisk is also the snowflake. And if you want to shorten the snowflake down because you're trying to save time on talking snake, that's I think the genesis of the 5 snake review.
That sounds like a shady podcast. That
I also used rusty bucket helmets.
Also
it's my metric. So
well, anyway, but otherwise, thank you to everyone who's joined us, whether it be on Patreon or not. Thank you always for helping me make this a really fun experience to do every time we do it. Otherwise, we will see you next week for more Eizouken. You can also expect, if you're one of our patrons, to get an after hours coming later today, which we'll be recording after this.
Yep.
And then we'll be covering Jeweler Richard 2 and 3 as the week goes along. But until we otherwise next see you, I hope you have a fantastic time. Look forward to Eizouken 4, which we'll be covering next week. And, we stand Macross around here, so I'll just say it. Embrace each other, everyone. It's the end of the universe. Good night.
Good night.